Thanks, Walter Moreau, for joining us this morning for this forum on Proposition B and the issue of homelessness in Austin. We're really delighted to have you with us because, the kind of precipitating question that brought you to here this morning is what can we do as a faith community around the May ballot with Proposition B, which will recriminalize homelessness and public camping and some other activities that tend to be associated with those in our community who are unhoused, but also not just opposing Proposition B, but also what we can do as a faith community to promote solutions to homelessness. If we can all sort of stipulate that criminalizing homelessness is not a solution, then in fact the work that you do at Foundation Communities is a model of what a sustainable practice could be in helping to if not solve, then mitigate the problems associated with homelessness in our community. It's been around since 1990. Foundation Communities is an established part of the community and has been doing great work for a long time. And you, as executive director, we're really delighted that you've taken the time to join us this morning. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to share about our work and talk about Proposition B and other ways that y'all can support folks who have been homeless. This is really my passion. I've been director at Foundation Communities not quite 25 years, and I love building really beautiful, affordable housing and providing the kind of support services that help people to be successful. So I thought I'd start by sharing about Foundation Communities and how I got into this work. And I have a short video that less than 3 minutes that gives you a virtual tour of some of the properties, just so you've probably driven by some of our communities in Austin. We have 23 communities, north, south, east, and west. They don't look like affordable housing. So if you've driven by them and you had no idea that that was affordable housing, then that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. We have about 7,000 residents. Most of our residents are hardworking folks that are, in that $15,000 to $50,000 a year income bracket. We also have folks who are not working. They may be retired or have a disability or have other reasons they're not working. And about 1,000 of our 7,000 residents were formerly homeless. And we have two programs. I'll talk a little bit more about those, but for about 750 folks, they're single adults that have been homeless or at risk that live in 7 of our supportive housing communities. And then we have about 250 residents that are families with children. And that's more spread throughout our different communities. I think I'm going to try to share my screen and show this quick video virtual tour of our work, because I think that's a good place to start, just to ground kind of what the properties look like and who lives there.
Foundation Communities provides that stepping stone to get back on your feet.
There you go.
Foundation Communities is one of the best decisions I've ever made.
I love it here. It's just a great opportunity.
Starting over is pretty tough. When I found Foundation Communities, it gave me a chance.
There's nothing like having a place that I could call my own.
I never thought that I would ever be able to live in a place that was so nice, was so well built, and that I could afford.
And it's ours, our place to call home. This is our beautiful kitchen. This is our family room where we play games and dance, right? This is my room, and this is Caden's room where all the fun happens.
Foundation does so much for us.
I think it's really helped me stay on track.
Welcome to my house. This is my kitchen, my guest bedroom. As you can see, I love red. I collect snow globes. This is my living room, my bedroom, and the handicapped bathroom. Every doorway in every room is wide. It is beautifully appointed for a handicap.
They have fitness trails, exercise classes to get you moving and grooving.
It's a huge benefit.
And so I'm taking advantage of all the services that I can to be able to realize my dream.
Trying to find childcare for 3 small children was difficult.
Having my son right at the Learning Center, that has been a huge help for me.
They're tutored there, they play games, there's computer access for them. It's beautiful.
Hi, welcome to my home. It's compact, but it's very efficient. This is my breakfast bar. This is my bedroom, my large and lovely living room. And this is the place for my family pictures.
Having a place for me and my kids that is safe, it means being able to breathe and means life.
Having a home, having a place where I'm safe, it just has given me the ability to grow.
And without foundation communities, I'm not sure what their childhood would have looked like. To them, this is always going to be their childhood home.
You might recognize a few of those communities. Our M Station apartments are probably closest to, oops, hold on a sec. Okay. The M Station apartments we built about 15 years ago, and it's 150 families at MLK and the train tracks. So you may drive by that frequently. Capitol Studios in the video is right downtown across from the La Quinta. Kind of a miracle that we were able to buy that piece of land in downtown when we did. And it serves about 132 residents. Most have been homeless, as well as folks who just work downtown area and on a lower income. And I think we have 5 musicians that live there. The really important thing about our model is that we do housing and services. We focus particularly on education, health, and economic programs. It's sort of sad for me to watch that video because you see all the kids in the Learning Center. This was shot before a year ago. But generally we have about 1,000 kids that participate in our after-school programs at our learning centers. We have 14 centers around town. A couple of them do pre-K, all for free. For kids before school age. We have adult classes at night, computer classes, money management, ESL, English second language classes. We have a neat course in the humanities that's college accredited. Our health programs really run from fitness classes, like in the video you saw Zumba, which is the most wildly popular class ever. We have more people doing it online than we even did in person, because you can dance in your own house and nobody can see you. There's cooking classes and walking clubs and diabetes groups, but then more intensive health services, especially for folks that may have been homeless that are struggling with substance abuse issues. We have a psychiatric nurse team. And then we also do health insurance enrollment. So navigating enrollment in the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare can get really complicated. So we help about 5,000 people a year go in the marketplace and navigate that. I'm also really proud of the 5,000 folks we help get insurance. 1,000 of them are musicians. We have a particular outreach program with HAM to try to make sure musicians get coverage. And then finally, we do a lot of economic programs. So we do income taxes for folks for free. That's the big program, and that's happening right now. Typically about 20,000 tax returns, about $35 million in refunds. But it's a one-stop financial program. So if folks need coaching on their budget, on credit, on college aid. So I'm proud of our services, and it really, to me, it's not just having a place you can afford, but also having those services at your doorstep that really helps folks to be successful. We have 2 new communities. I should say we have a waiting list at all of our properties. Sometimes, like at Capitol Studios, it's over I don't know, a couple years long. We just opened a brand new community in Northwest Austin near the Domain. It's called Waterloo Terrace. We have 132 apartments. About half of them are occupied right now. The rest are leasing. In January, when we started our leasing, we had over 1,000 people apply for 132 apartments. And that's without any marketing, that's just through word of mouth. We're doing a lottery, so we're basically drawing 40 names at a time, contacting those folks, and then going through the process to see if they are a good fit. We're just finishing construction on our Laurel Creek apartments, which is larger apartments, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. There's 88 apartments on North Lamar. If you're ever in that area between Breaker and Parmer, it's a wonderful part of town. There's 17 of those apartments will be reserved for families and kids that have been homeless. Usually those are families that apply in partnership with one of the shelters in town or the Salvation Army Passages program. That is the program that we have the greatest demand. We usually get 2 or 3 applications a day. And we generally only have 1 apartment a week that turns over. It's a very intensive program, so the families live with us, are in the program for up to 2 years. We provide a weekly case management support to help that family work on their goals, whether it's employment, health, childcare. And then this year we had about a 93% success rate, that at the end of 2 years, families graduated. What I like about the program is families don't have to move. Their rent might go from very, very low to an affordable level in the, say, $750 a month for a 2-bedroom. But the kids don't have to change schools. The families can graduate in place. And I really think that's an effective model for families and kids that have been homeless, to provide that level of stability for a long period of time. I might share, I'm happy to take some questions in the chat or in conversation. I might just share a little bit about my background and how I got into this. Just on my faith background, I'm a cradle Episcopalian and had a junior high, had a born again, charismatic kind of experience, became very religious in high school. Read the Gospels over and over and over, and picked up, I think, along the way, the focus on the poor and marginalized. Didn't know where I wanted to go to college, so I decided to go to Baylor in Waco. I grew up in San Diego, and then I went to Waco. So that was a real culture shock. And I studied economics, not from a finance or a banking perspective, but more from a social, how do we as a society allocate resources and care for the poor. Baylor also, I'm sure some of you can identify college as a formative time, and I kind of realized I don't quite fit in here. But I knew when I got out, I wanted to do nonprofit work. I wanted to do something that made a difference. I feel really lucky because I was doing this job with United Way, and I got assigned to a homeless task force to look at solutions to homelessness. This was in 1989. And my job as a young staffer was to work on the housing committee. And they sent me for a week to Los Angeles to go to this housing conference. So I flew there, having spent 4 years in Waco. I get off the plane, I tell the cab driver to take me to 5th and Julian, which is the Nickel, which is the heart of Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles. And if you've been there or know anything about Skid Row, it's intense. There's people, it's 10 square blocks, and people are camping and living any way they can. The conference was with this group called the Skid Row Housing Trust. And in the 80s, they were buying up the old flop houses, old motels, renovating them into little apartments. Of course, they spent a lot of money earthquake proofing these buildings, but they were beautiful. And I got to tour them and hang out with the director. I met a lot of residents. Some of them had been homeless, but now they were working there as maintenance or management jobs. You'd have no idea they were homeless. And the light went off for me that this really works. If you want to help get folks off the street, providing a place to live that's stable and the support people need, this, kind of duh. It was an epiphany for me, and the other piece of this was I realized I could do this. I like finance, I like economics, and these are complicated real estate transactions. So I came back to town and was determined. I started driving around looking at old hotels I could buy. And I told my wife, Carolyn, I want to do this. I want to buy an old hotel. And she's a social worker. And she said, well, that sounds great. But no, you are not going to buy a hotel. Why don't you go work for this group, Foundation Communities? And at the time, Foundation Communities had been around 5 years. Was started by a UT grad student that was involved in co-op housing, Francie Ferguson. They bought 4 old apartments. They hadn't bought any hotels at that time. But Francie and I became friends, and we worked together, and we've been able pretty much to buy or build a new property a year. She left as director in '97. The first supportive housing property I was able to do was not a hotel. It was an old nursing home, the Garden Terrace Nursing Home on William Cannon. I see a couple heads shaking. They're familiar with that. We got it in 2000, 2001. It had shut down. It was closed, boarded up, paid $1 million for it, which at the time was like, can't believe we're spending that much. But it's 8 acres of land and beautiful trees. And long story short is we completely renovated that building. We've since added a second phase, and we just added a third phase. So I think it's 124 units total right now. It's been there for 20 years. We didn't do a lottery when we leased. We just said, show up at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. And we should have known better that we were going to have 100 people in line, starting in the wee hours of the morning. I remember 2 of the very first residents. Their stories are great examples. Michael was a electrician, licensed electrician, had made good money, had a series of family tragedies. His son had committed suicide. His wife, they went through a bitter divorce. He had a motorcycle accident soon after that, and it crushed his leg. So he had a lot of physical therapy, got addicted to pain medicine, wound up homeless, went to the Salvation Army Adult Rehab Center on South Congress, got better, got sober, and when he got out, he needed a place to live. So he ended up in line at Garden Terrace, was able to move in. And he lived with us for 2 years. During that time, he got his electrician license again. He actually was making too much money. He was working at the Dell Children's Hospital when that was being built at Mueller. So he's a great example of somebody who was homeless. Stable housing was really key to him getting back on his feet, literally. And then he moved on. I have another resident, I think our second resident at Garden Terrace. Her name is Lisa. She wasn't homeless, but she had 2 suitcases when she moved in. She was a nurse in Austin for her whole career. She chose nursing because she really loved caring for people. And I believe it was in her 50s when she had her first heart attack, continued to work, had a second heart attack. And at that point, the doctor said, that's it. You cannot continue to work. And she didn't have family or friends. She had some savings, but over the course of the next 18 months, used that money, sold her car, and couldn't keep up with her rent in Austin. But she worked long enough. She has Social Security income. So I think her check is maybe $1,200 a month. But where are you going to find a place to live as a single person on $1,200 a month? Garden Terrace is all bills paid. I just talked to Ann during the winter storm when we were doing meals and getting emergency water to folks. She's somebody who, our housing is a long-term solution, and it's as she says, it's small. It's not what I expected, but it works. You know, it has met what she needs. So I realize I've been talking a lot about foundation communities and our work. We are just one of a bunch of groups in town that have a model of supportive housing, which I'll just use as an umbrella term for housing and services that I believe is really ultimately the solution for many or most people who have been homeless. Why don't I stop here and just see what questions you all have, and hope I'm not rambling too much.
I have a real quick question for you. Just hearing the number of people that show up, you know, to apply versus the number of places you have, could you give us a thought about what percentage of the need, of the total need that you might be fulfilling, and what it would take to scale this up so all of the needs could be met for housing?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, if we just think about single folks that are on the street, we serve about 750 folks right now. The other largest provider is Community First, the Mobile Loaves and Fishes Village, and I think they're up to 300 or 400 residents, and they're opening phase 2. So they will be adding another 100, 200, and then they're looking at phase 3. Then there's many other groups, Caritas and Front Steps and some others work more of a scattered site model and have rental vouchers to help folks. I'm sorry, I'm not the best with the data and the statistics, but we probably collectively in Austin, there are a few thousand folks, formerly homeless folks, that have some type of voucher or site-based support. And the need easily is double that.
The last point in time count was 2,500 or so.
Yeah. The point in time count, I've followed that over the years, and it's not a precise number. For a long time, it's stayed in the 2,000 range. And I think I take, Alan Graham at Community First and myself and others, I feel like up until recent years, we've built enough housing to at least keep that number level. But it does feel like in the last few years, the numbers really jumped again.
And that 2,500 is probably an underestimate by a factor of 2?
Correct. Yeah.
Walter, I have a question from the meeting house here. Two actually. One is, have you found that as vaccines are coming available, are those services provided to your residents, or some sort of service for locating? And then the second question, maybe you can comment on, is I live in Williamson County, so my county commissioners are adamantly opposed to what's going on down at Cottonwood, and Candlewood. I'm sorry, Candlewood. And so I'm kind of curious. Actually, I have a meeting hopefully with Judge Gravel next Monday to talk about this, and if you've got thoughts or comments on that might prove useful to that opportunity, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, the vaccine question, we've been trying since the beginning of the year to get a vaccine clinic at our supportive housing communities. The 7 that serve single adults that have been homeless we changed all our protocols. We've had only 1 outbreak. But most of our residents are medically vulnerable. So I'm proud to say last week, we finally got the on-site clinics. Austin Public Health came through and they've done 3 properties. They got 3 to go this week. It's hard for us to get transportation figured out for a lot of our residents and try to get everybody through the crazy sign-up system when people don't have emails or phone numbers, and on-site clinics for us was the way to go. Our communities are a lot like nursing homes and congregate care. With one exception, we don't have staff, like nursing staff, going door to door to door. So that is a difference. On the Candlewood Suites, I really support the city's approach to buying hotels. It's a good time in the real estate market to buy hotels. Their hotels are hanging on, so it's not like you can pick them up real cheap. But I've bought 3 hotels in the past. The old Ramada at Ben White. That wasn't an extended stay, so we had to add kitchens and baths. It was quite a challenge. But we bought 2 extended stays on I-35, one at St. John's and one near Old Torf. So in general, I do think it's a smart move by the city to help scale up and build more supportive housing, given the need, to look towards trying to buy at this time in the market hotels, especially extended stay. The Candlewood I walked that property before the city bought it, and Caritas is doing that one with the city, which is fantastic. I'm not sure what I would tell you to say to the judge. I guess you can point to us. We've done this, Spring Terrace and Arbor Terrace were old hotels, over 10 years old. We've been running them. They're beautiful, they're well maintained. You don't know, once people are housed and have a stable place to live, if it's well managed, they have no impact on their neighbors.
Yeah, one thing you might say to the judge is there are probably more homeless people than will fit in the Candlewood Suites living in that area. Homeless people frequently go to shopping malls because that's a source of resources. They just may not be very visible, but they're there. And it's more or less trading unhoused homeless people, not supervised or controlled in any way, for an supportive environment for potentially those very same homeless people.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for that discussion. I'll just add that I watched the entire discussion at the Williamson County Commissioner's Court on this, and the reason I'm so driven to talk to Judge Ravel is because the entire discussion was about the impact on the neighbors and the businesses. There was zero discussion on what do we need to do about the unhoused folks that are in that location. So I think you just completely missed the boat. And so thank you for that. And I'll certainly do a little bit more research into the things that you're doing, Walter. Thanks.
I think you speaking to the judge and speaking out in favor is one incredibly helpful way that you all can work on this issue, because if the politicians, the elected officials only hear the negative voices, we have to counterbalance that with positive voices. And that takes organizing, especially from people who may live near that property. I'd like to share, in 2007, I had a chance to do a little sabbatical in London and go meet with a group called the Peabody Trust. They're a big, old nonprofit housing group. I think they started in the 1850s by George Peabody, who was an American finance guy. I was having lunch when I first got there with the Peabody folks, and they wanted to know how expensive it was in Austin to buy a house. So we talked about that for a while. And then they asked, how many rough sleepers do you have in Austin? Rough sleepers is their term for homeless, kind of like it. So I shared, our point in time count was about 2,000 back at that time frame. And their eyes got big and they were like, 2,000 rough sleepers. Did we hear you right? Did you say, how big is the city of Austin? So I said, yeah, that's accurate. And, we're a good sized city. It's in Dallas and Houston are much bigger. They've got 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 folks that are sleeping rough. So I asked them, how many rough sleepers do you have in London, the city of 12 million, the most expensive real estate market in the world? And they were very hesitant to say, but they basically said they'd just done their point in time count. They do the same thing. And they had counted 417 rough sleepers. And it had increased by 17 or 18 that year. And so I my eyes got big and I said, did you say 417? And I did, did click. As I was going around London, I didn't see homeless people everywhere. So I spent my sabbatical really trying to get my head around that. What did they do and how did they do it? And I had a number of takeaways. First off, and perhaps obvious, is that they have a social safety net. They have universal health care. They have a more robust mental health system, a more robust substance abuse system. They also have an incarceration rate that's 10% of ours. So for the reentry population and the challenges of housing, they just don't have that same challenge. There's a right to housing. So there's an expectation that every city council must come up with an option for people. Oftentimes it's a bed and breakfast, but that doesn't mean what we think it means. Often that means a boarding house. That's not real nice, but they don't have shelters. The politics there are different in that there's an expectation that there should not be folks sleeping rough. And if there are, then they expect the politicians to do something. I think that maybe is part of the British sensibility. That is not proper. It is not prim and proper to see folks sleeping rough, and it's just a disgrace and it's not acceptable. The other takeaway I had was that they have scaled up a very diverse, robust, supportive housing system, from the bed and breakfast group homes to communities very much like what we do. There's just a tremendous more resources. I don't have the exact numbers, but the federal spending in Great Britain on supportive housing is equivalent to what we spend in the United States. It's just for a much, much smaller population. So my final takeaway is that this is a solvable problem. London is the most expensive real estate market in the world. Probably the world, maybe Dubai or other places up there, but there is a political dimension to this. There is a commitment of resources, and there is all the other issues that go into why somebody is sleeping rough that have to be addressed as well. So I'll leave that there. It was I hope that is a hopeful anecdote.
I have a question, Walter, speaking of politics, has Foundations Community taken a public stance about this legislation that's gonna be voted on, what is it, next month? Or is that like too dangerous because it would be seen, just by talking about the elephant in the room, it could be seen as us being negative?
I have a board committee meeting this week to try to yes, we are publicly opposed to Proposition B. I just want to check in with the board and see how out there we want to be. I'm trying to get in touch. I honestly am not up to speed with the campaign to vote no on Proposition B, how organized that is. But we can put some resources to that, especially among our residents, to get people out to vote. I think this election probably comes down to turnout. I feel very confident Prop B would be opposed and voted down. But if folks don't turn out in this unusual May election, then there's some risk there.
I've been very impacted by the tent cities on the freeways and under the freeways, especially since the storm. Maybe there are more. I suppose the issue is visibility as opposed to an increase. But short term, what are our options?
Oh, that is a very, very hard question. I agree with you. There's more visibility. I think there's a sense that there's actually an increase in people too, because of the economy, COVID. Long run, I don't think we should be letting people camp everywhere and anywhere. That's not good. It's not the right or humane response. So short run, because we can't scale up the volume of supportive housing fast enough, it takes us generally 4 years to build a new project. We just broke ground on Zilker Studios. It'll be 110 apartments on South Lamar. Spent all of last year getting the land and getting the funding together and the permits, and it'll take 18 months to build it. The mayor's hosting a summit, which is a get in 3 weeks with business leaders and other leaders to try to figure out what are the short-term solutions. Does that mean some type of interim shelter facilities? I think we probably are headed before the end of the year to either the Texas Department of Transportation and or the city beginning to start cleaning up some of the tent locations. And there aren't good options for where to send people.
Many of the areas where people are now camping are even illegal under the current ordinance. Okay. Yeah. They just haven't enforced it because there's not enough space in the jails. Okay. But my claim is that we've had a homeless problem in Austin for 20 or 30 years, but we've been able to successfully hide it. Okay. People who were unable to hold down a job, who needed all the services Walter talks about, could always find, when real estate was cheaper, they could always find some place to hang out. $1 a night flop houses, sleeping in somebody's garage. And because we made it illegal to be visible, we didn't do anything about it when it was cheap to do something about it.
I would agree with everything you said. I see the question in the chat. Is it possible to offer places for tents with amenities? Something like that. Okay. I think that is a possible interim, short run solution. And
how do we change? Okay, I'm thinking negativity bias is a psychological term that I hope we're all familiar with, and it's so easy and so as Mary was saying, so prevalent and so in your face, these tent cities and the trash and the garbage. I live in southeast Austin near Riverside, and it's very prevalent here. And how do we get this message out, like your little video? How do we make that more pervasive, so that people see that there is hope and that there is a different way of doing things. And part of it, I do think, is this kind of, especially in Texas and Americans with the pull yourself up by your own bootstraps mentality.
Yeah.
Making that change possible and getting that message out there.
That makes me think of the politics are very heated right now. I learned recently that the mayor of Austin, that Steve has not talked to Greg in like 2 years about anything. So there's no communication between the governor and the mayor. I'm focused on trying to get more housing built. Like, I want to keep my head down and stay out of the fray. Do what we do. I know what we do works. It's not enough, but I got to do what we do. I feel like Alan Graham, who's a friend at Community First Village, he's got the same sort of mentality. Leave me alone. I'm doing what I'm doing. We know that it's part of the solution. I want people to know about our model. That is hopeful, that there are long-term solutions to this. It's going to take a major public investment.
I just feel like maybe there's a way we can advertise and utilize this idea more so that people, education is key, educating the public.
Well, I'd like to make a suggestion in that regard. The place where I've seen the most discussion of this issue lately has been on the neighborhood social media, like Nextdoor, and I forget what the other one was that neighborhood associations use. But there's lots of discussion between neighbors of all political persuasions, and we live in a very diverse neighborhood. And so I think one way to reach people who vote is for you as a member of your neighborhood to join these social media groups and post there and enhance the discussion any way you can.
Walter, I've got a question. I'm wondering if you could tell us what you know of who the people are and forces are behind the Proposition B ballot issue. And I'm wondering if they, I assume maybe I don't know, I would guess maybe the Chamber of Commerce is probably behind it, or I'm just wondering if they have proffered any kind of solutions. I mean, once they're for getting people off the streets. Okay, somebody has to have already challenged them with, okay, where shall they go? And I'm wondering if they've advanced any ideas that then persons like us could join in and say, yeah, but let's do that first or something. Any ideas about how to strategize toward those who are supporting Proposition B?
Yeah, I think it's fair and accurate to say that the supporters behind Proposition B are very, very conservative, and they're using this as a political wedge issue against Mayor Adler. And not necessarily, I don't think that's a crowd that necessarily really cares about, in my opinion, finding what the short-term solutions are. The Chamber and the Downtown Business Association, they do want to find solutions. So I imagine their membership is more split on for or against Prop B. But I think that group generally recognizes that's here nor there. That's not going to be a short-term solution. Some of the business leaders, you may recall a year or two ago, were trying to raise money to build sprung shelters, which is a model from San Diego, basically large tent shelters where folks would be in close proximity, crowded in, but off the street. Of course, that with the pandemic, that was a bad idea. So that's not happening. The summit, the big summit that's coming up in a few weeks is an attempt, I think, to try to find some solutions that are locations and more for folks to camp and or have other arrangements that are acceptable to the business community. And this is not really where the mayor and the city have wanted to go to open more shelters, but I think it's a give on the city's side to say, yeah, we got to do something short run. To be candid, my work is longer term, so I'm not as involved in the on the street emergency situation. The emergency needs have been a long time coming, and some of it just comes to how unaffordable it is in Austin and the lack of investment at all levels in affordable housing. I mean, really, the ultimate solution to homelessness is not to let folks be homeless in the first place. And you got me on a soapbox there, so I hope that's helpful.
Walter, do you know anything about how Governor Abbott's parking lot plan is working with temporary housing there? Do you know how that's going?
The only things I've heard are horrible, that it's not good living conditions and health and safety issues. And the Other Ones Foundation has sort of tried to step into the void to help manage that, what's it called, Camp Abbott. But I've not heard anything good lately.
I'm wondering if the city council, not city council, the Chamber of Commerce perhaps should be the focus of our efforts. because they're somewhere in the middle between the conservatives who are behind Proposition B and the city. And, that might be a good place for us to go with some message that to the effect that, the only way to solve this is to prevent homelessness in the first place by ultimately having a home a right, and by providing sufficient social services so that people don't end up on the street, and by providing sufficient housing for those who do, and with services. And we just take that message to them and say, we're watching, how you're responding to this issue.
Yeah, and not so much the chamber, most of the leaders I've heard are the Downtown Austin Association, DAA.
Okay.
And they're probably the most impacted business group downtown. I think, Reuven, I think you made a very good point earlier that homelessness is it's in Williamson County. There isn't a part of town that isn't experiencing more visible homeless folks. But the DAA is probably the group at the forefront in the business world.
And there's some of them that actually care about in the DAA.
So I have a question about Integral Care had talked about starting a permanent supportive housing project for the mentally ill. I'm wondering if that's up and running. And I'm wondering if some of the money that's been diverted from the police into mental health, it seems like it would make a lot of sense for Integral Care or some other mental health authority to be running permanent supportive housing, since so many of the people who are homeless have mental health problems.
Yeah, Integral Care opened up, I think it's about 60 apartments called Oak Terrace. And that opened a year or so ago. It's in East Austin on the site, piece of land they owned. It was a big challenge. It was a 5-year project, so that's how long it took to get it built. But it's up and running and doing well. Integral Care is partnering with the city now to do the Texas Bungalow Hotel. So the city's buying 2 hotels, Candlewood, which has gotten lots and lots of attention in the press, but a smaller property that's, I think, 65-room extended stay hotel. Integral Care is going to partner with the city on that. And that could open before the end of the year, hopefully.
How is that going? I mean, I just think that's a really complex population to manage in permanent supportive housing. And I know, like when Presidium brought out the apartments at Riverside and Pleasant Valley, they talked about giving housing to 100 homeless people immediately. But I know the management over there, where we have a lot of people from Casa Marinella, was having fits with trying to manage folks in an apartment setting where they weren't set up for permanent supportive housing.
You just hit on the key. It has to be well managed with services to support folks. The Oak Terrace, I believe, all the reports I've heard there are really positive. Hearing from Integral Care staff, it was a rough first year. A lot of lessons learned, and there are a lot of challenges, but they're figuring it out. We do need in Austin a variety of nonprofit supportive housing providers. We aren't the houser of last resort and can't serve everybody. So we got to grow our model. I'm excited that Caritas is breaking ground this summer on a new project. It's going to be large, 170 some units off Rutland. And if the Candlewood Hotel goes through, they'll be opening that property, and that's 80 some apartments potentially by the end of the year. So there are good new projects getting built, and we've got to do more. As a big city, we need a variety of models and providers and new communities.
We're almost at the top of the hour, but I see 2 hands raised, Claire and Renee.
I also have a question.
Walter, it's me. It's Renee. I was just wondering if you had numbers on the homeless, like over the past couple of decades, because it seems like even with 2,000, it's impossible to get ahead of it. partially because, you know, all of the social problems, but because of our nice weather. So is there any chance, and then you've already said you've housed thousands of people already, and there's still 2,000 on the street. Is that just a static number that every time you house someone, you know, another person comes in to Austin homeless?
Yeah, you know, the point in time count is a point in time. And I think estimates are that number 2,000 is surely too low. It's probably 4,000 or 5,000. And if you go over the course of the year, it's, you know, 10 or 15,000. People's situations change. They may be homeless for a short period of time and then not again. I think you make a good point that I don't want to oversell. Supportive housing, I believe, is the solution to homelessness. I don't want to oversell it because we're not able to build fast enough and scale up fast enough. I do think it's helpful to have a vision of London, that this is a solvable problem. So we've got to at least build in that direction. We may need some interim shelter emergency solutions because of the acute crisis that we've got right now.
Building in that direction means becoming a social democracy.
I wouldn't argue with that.
big task here in Texas.
Yeah, you know, we need to pass Medicaid for all in Texas. I mean, that will help address homelessness.
Well, Claire Callahan has her hand raised, and maybe we'll end with a final question from someone we haven't heard from yet. Claire?
My question is just if anybody knows if anyone is out there already handing out tents, because this is kind of a dream I've had, is to just somehow fund it and just hand out tents. I know that's really kind of counterproductive to the solution, but like I was homeless for 8 months and it just really would help to just have a tent. Does anyone know if anyone's already doing it? Or if there's like some organization that's already doing that?
I think there are a number of groups. The Other Ones Foundation is doing a lot of work on the street. The Sunrise Homeless Navigation Center in South Austin is also doing a lot of work on it directly to help people. I think that, Jim, to just bring it some conclusion too, I think one of your questions for this morning was, what can you do? And I don't know if I answered that, but I think we've collectively put a lot of ideas on the table. Lots of ways politically to advocate for the kinds of changes that we
also have a far bigger property for our meeting than we actually need for worship services. And we'd appreciate ideas about how we could use that property.
Sure, that's something I'd be happy to help look at.
I just raised that question in the chat in a different way.
We are working on a new site at the old Parker Lane United Methodist Church near Riverside and Old Torf. And we're going through zoning, and it's turning into a very fierce zoning battle with some single family owners that live across the street. And it's exhausting. I'm hopeful, I think we'll prevail. Part of it is they don't want to see vacant church land, that they like to see the wildflowers and see the vacant church land turn into apartments, even if it's well run and well managed and beautifully designed. So there are church opportunities. There's a lot of church land in Central Austin that could be more dense and help out.
Well, I was raising the question of like churches could just, if they could just convert a few rooms in their facilities to house homeless with maybe exterior doors and so that they're secure with regard to the space that belong other spaces in the church. I mean, it seems to me that a lot of churches could easily budget that, but then they would need to have, and then they would care for the persons that are staying with them, and then but there would need to be a support network for them as well, of social workers, I think. But does that make any sense? I mean, it seems like there's tons of churches and synagogues and mosques and places that should be, you know, housing the homeless now, could be encouraged to do it.
That's definitely been done in some cases, but complicated.
Yeah. Friends, we only have 3 minutes before worship begins. So I think it's probably time to transition. I did want to note that this is one of, if not the best attended of the forums since we've been doing them online. So I thought Walter might take some encouragement from that.
Thank you.
So
thank you, Walter, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.